Hello, this is Brian. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to quickly dissect this lander for you to give you a little closer look at how it's built and why I built it this way. Design requirements, well, I needed something that was fairly small and minimal and had at least, I'd say, a couple thousand delta V on it so it could fly from the South Pole base to most biomes on Mun and back again, do the, go get the science, come back, fill contracts, etc. And if it can't reach an area, then what I'll probably do is fly the cargo lander out and have that serve as a tanker to refuel this. So that's probably what's going to be coming up in the upcoming episodes. So to go over this, of course, with any lander in a low G environment, you want it to be nice and wide so it doesn't tip over. And I was trying to make this a lot easier to fly. So instead of worrying about neutralizing all my horizontal velocity when I am landing, all I need to do is get it down to maybe, below about 15 meters per second, and then make sure the nose is pointed into the prograde direction so that when I land, I've got these tracks here that this thing will roll on, and it won't be so big a deal. I don't really need to neutralize that. The other thing is that I can probably land on slopes with this thing, and with these tracks, I don't really need a precision landing. I can just drive to where I need to go or to drive to an area that's hard to fly to. So let's take a look at this. So what I ended up with was something that is, these are 1 meter high. You got about half a meter here too. So I'd say that this is about 1 meter off of the surface, which is really, really low. Again, we got a half meter here, 1 meter here, and about a little less than a meter here. So it's about 2.5 to 3 meters wide on each side. So it's what, 6 all the way across or something like that. So it's super, super wide. Should be very hard to flip this thing. And it's capable of both horizontal and vertical flight. So I built it kind of with VTOL in mind. The mods that I used for this are primarily the LLL mod, which gives me this interesting looking cockpit. Gives me these boxy looking fuel tanks. In a vacuum, you could go with something like a skeleton ship, but just for role-play purposes, I think something that's skeletal is not going to be very resistant to, regolith flying around when you ignite your engines, and you could puncture a fuel tank and explode. So that's that. Now, one of the other big design features here is, because this is a vertical takeoff, is that I wanted the center of mass to almost never change as I am burning fuel. Now, wasn't quite able to meet that goal, and the reason is because just with one of these, this is 2 fuel tanks here. It's a full-length one and a third-length one. And just having 2 full-length tanks, one on each side, didn't give me enough delta V for what I wanted, so I added these 2 on the back right here, which means that before I fire up those vertical engines, I need to balance out my fuel, which I will use TAC Fuel Balancer 4. Just to make that easy, you don't need to do that, of course. You could just do it manually if you wanted. So let's piece this thing apart and take a look at it. So I've got 2 large monopropellant tanks on top. I've got science experiments kind of littered all over the front of this thing. Just remove all of these. There we go. Got some solar panels right here. These are the protected ones from the LLL mod. And we've got a comms dish here. We've got some RCS thrusters here and here. Got some RCS on the front. This is not going to translate very well. If I start translating with this, the rear end is going to go much faster than the front, so I have to be careful with that. That's just, one of those trade-offs. I don't think I'll be doing too much of that. On the bottom, I've got a whole bunch of batteries. Let's get rid of these. And I just put them there just to kind of hide them and keep the center of gravity down nice and low. Let's see, we got docking node on back, Science Junior on back with the mech jeb. We've got some lights there for landing. And now we're kind of getting down to it. These are kind of for role-playing purposes, you don't need these, obviously. I was just thinking that it didn't make a lot of sense to have these tracks kicking up a whole bunch of regolith up towards the engines and everything else, so I decided to protect those. Now, originally I had a door sitting right here. Let's see if I can find that door. Oh, here it is. So originally it was like this, so that the crew could get out through the rear, but there just wasn't a good place for that science junior materials base, so I just stuck it on the back there. And then I figure the crew will have to leave through the cockpit, just like the pilot and co-pilot would. So now normally on the LLL mod, these hull sections can only hold, well, a third length hull section like I'm using here can't hold anybody in them. I thought that was kind of silly, seeing as this can hold two. This is not that much smaller, so I edited these parts and added one seat per part so that this could fly with two up here and potentially three more back here. And also, the LLL mod does not allow you to store science in anywhere but the cockpit. I also thought that was kind of silly, so I added the ability to store science back here. So that means I can store one set of experiments here, another set here, another set here, another set here, and one set in the experiments themselves, which means that with one trip to each biome, I should be fine. Now let's look at the engines. We got the LV909s, of course, for fuel efficiency. That's what they're attached to. Got these arms, and then we got these parts right here, which is the 1 by 1 to 1.25 adapter. You get rid of those. Get rid of these fueling ports, or not fueling ports, these are, what do they call these things? They're called, should be right here, yeah, CC-R2 connector port from the Kerbal attachment system. That's just so I can refuel it. We've got the Kerbal Founderies tracks on the sides, and let's see, more LV909 here. We've got, yeah, more adapters, 1-to-1 here. And then now we're just down to the last few parts here. Third length hull sections and then the fuel tanks on the side. Now let me reload this. Okay, so now one big thing about these tracks is that they have a ton of traction, which is why you want to use them. The downside of that is that these actually have so much torque that if I floor it, I could flip this thing, do a wheelie, flip this back, and then knock off, the science tuner or one of these parts. So I need to be careful with that. Or what I can do when I'm up in space is I can just lower the torque ratio like that. Then it doesn't produce so much torque. I think that also limits its top speed. So if I get I'm on flat ground, I'm going to be there for a while, maybe I'll increase this torque ratio so I can go faster. The big thing here is that I don't want a lot of overhangs here. Because I'm so low to the ground here, it's like a lowrider. I can easily smash this nose onto something and then blow the cockpit up. Or even hit the brakes here and have this tip down and hit the ground, explode. Now, one other thing, kind of tricky thing I do, I had to set these a little bit off center. If you can see here, these are just slightly off of center, both of these parts here, and that's just to make sure that thrust fires right through the center of mass. So center of mass is here, here's the center of thrust, and you can see that that's pretty much pixel perfect in there. Now, to check the vertical thrust, the best thing to do is to set these, to limit these to 0, and then turn these up. Now you can see what will happen if I fire these engines, and these are, yeah, those are super close too. So any difference here, if this center of thrust is off a little bit, say it's over here, then this difference is like leverage the engine is going to put on the craft and make this thing, go nose down and spin in circles. So you need to be able to overcome that with something like reaction wheels or RCS. In my case, I'm using RCS for basically all of that. This cockpit has a little bit of torque, but not a whole lot. I could have put a part on here that provides a whole lot more torque, but that would have extended the nose out farther, and I didn't want to do that for reasons I previously mentioned. Now, I was thinking that having this up high like this would produce some kind of stability, and I'm kind of thinking that's actually not the case. What I was thinking was that if I'm just flying around and I'm getting kind of careless and, let's say I do this, that this would kind of naturally want to go back to level because the center of thrust is higher than the center of mass. But I'm kind of thinking that I was wrong. But the other purpose here is that with these engines mounted like this, they don't need to be sitting on the bottom. If they were sitting on the bottom, this would have to be much higher off the ground, and that just gives you a higher center of mass. So they're still a good thing to have on here. Okay, so that's that. Let's take this thing for a spin, shall we? Okay, here we are on MUN. Let's start by accelerating. So you can see here the torque ratio, it's popping a wheelie. That can very quickly. Oh, see, that's what I was talking about. I'm going to restore that. Okay, so this time, set this to, I'll say 0.75 for now. Okay, let's see how we do. Much better. Okay. Got a little bit of air, I should say vacuum there. Comes another one. Okay, as we're doing 13 meters per second, seems pretty good. Now, how about flying over into this crater over here? Let's do that. Oh, you know what? I think I'm still thrust limited, yes. Okay, here we go. RCS on. Let's take off. Okay, I'm going to bank a little bit here. Whoa. Got some oscillations here. It's trying to get underneath its horizontal velocity vector because I have this enabled. It's just having trouble doing that. So let's turn this on. Now let's bank over there and see if we can land. So I turned down the smokescreen effects because it's just driving me nuts. Nav HUD here. Getting the flow rate vector down into... Okay, these guys need to shut up. There. Okay, I need to get my prograde vector down into this crater. Still only moving at 16 meters per second here. It's because I'm not, well, I just didn't try to fly fast, so I'll show you here. I'll speed that up just by dipping my nose down. Remember, I'm in vertical thrust, so now those thrusters are pushing me back a little bit.
This is how I became a beatnik.
Up to 25 meters per second.
My race, and the one part dropped down into the hole. So since I couldn't shave, I said to my wife, well, I'm going to become a beatnik.
right over the lip here. Increase throttle just slightly. This will be like flaring on a runway. Move that. I want to touch down when the prograde vector's up here somewhere. Maybe flare a little bit. So slow me down. Lost control there for a moment. Okay, I need a lot less throttle. So much for my nice landing there. There we go. Keep this up, get this thing to settle. Also slow down. There we go. RCS off. Turn some ISS off. And I'm on the ground. Check that out. Try and slow down a little bit here. That was nice. I'm going to turn the balancer on, so if I fly again, it'll all be set. Okay. Now let's see if I can climb one of these hills. This will be a good test of traction. Oh, look at that. I landed on a pretty steep slope here. It's almost 20 degrees. Okay, here we go, climbing the side. I'm at, what, 30 degrees nose up now? There we go, 45 degrees. I can always kick in those horizontal engines if I need to. Let's see if it can do this. Come on, 45 degrees, you can do it. Get up there. Oh, nope, it's not doing it.
Could you tell me a little more about the target?
Now the other nice thing, like let's say I come and I go to hit this thing too hard. Oh, what did I hit? Oh, bummer. It looks like I can still fly like this. That's good to know. Anyway, I was going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to drive off a cliff. Well, I can just fire up those vertical thrusters and take care of it in the air instead of as an explosion on the ground. I can do this without SAS too. This is just a little bit easier. Alright, get down, you get down. There we go. Now, one thing else I need to be careful of is that I can't turn too hard here. See, there actually is, I can't go so fast that if I turn, I'll just smack an engine there. So I gotta be careful with that. I guess I handled that pretty well, but I have done that before. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for joining me, and I'm looking forward to flying this thing all over Mun, visiting all kinds of interesting places, grabbing all the science I can. And I'll probably just move this over to Minmus when I'm all done with it. So the next episode, I'm going to do a little contest for you all, so watch it. I'm going to rename this thing, and the name is going to have to do with something in the real world. And if you can figure that out, I don't know, give you some kind of shout out or name a vessel after you or something. Okay, until next time, fly with confidence.